What's up, First Thing First listeners? It's your boy Shay Sharp, co-host of FS1's Undisputed. I wanted to tell you about my new podcast, Club Shay Shay, where we always do something before two something. Each week, I sit down with a guest for a drink and conversation, and as host and proprietor of Club Shay Shay, I've welcomed in esteemed guests such as Snoop Dogg, Floyd Money Mayweather, LeVar Ball, Isaiah Thomas, just to mention a few. Whether I'm talking to an athlete, a musician, an actor, or a lifelong friend, Club Shay Shay is a place where people share inspiring and motivational stories about their journeys to prominence. The new episode drops every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Club Shay Shay now and make sure you never miss a new episode. Now, back to First Things First.
First things first, how is Bill Belichick starting to retool his Patriots roster for this coming season? Gronk's coming back. Does he have a fifth Lombardi trophy in his sights? And how desperate are the Chicago Bears for a superstar quarterback? Quite desperate. Good Thursday morning, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolfe alongside Nick, Brandon, Kevin Wilds. Brandon,
hey.
You retiring if the Bears get Russ or Deshaun, perhaps?
Oh, Jets. I said Jets. Jets. Jets.
That's the only way.
Those 30 catches with the Jets.
That's it.
Wouldn't happen.
All right, we'll get to that. We got to start this morning in Dallas. Swear it's official. The hard part is over. Dak officially signed his contract yesterday, richest in Cowboys history, 4 years, $160 million. Now comes the harder part. Got to show the world he's earned this deal. He's worth it. But first, he's got to show the world he's ready, and he's not rushing that process. Take a listen to what he had to say yesterday.
So when I first got hurt, the one thing that I said I wasn't going to do is put a time point on it because of so many different variables and things that can come up. And so, as I say, I'm ready and I'm getting close. I feel good. You saw me walk out here. I can do a lot of things that I obviously couldn't do weeks ago and even days ago that I'm doing today. So it's hard to say that I'll be ready in this time or that time, but I'll be ready when it matters, and I'll be more than healthy and better than I was before.
That's what you want to hear from your franchise quarterback. Brandon, you expect Dak to just pick up where he left off before he got hurt last year?
This is a tough one. No, Jen, I don't. I mean, he'll be out there on the field. He'll take the field. He'll probably be out there some point this offseason, definitely training camp. But the thing that we don't see is when your body's altered as a professional football player, as any professional athlete, what happens to everything else? That's why we always see guys go down with an ankle and then all of a sudden the next year their knee, their hip, because the body tries to overcompensate. He should be able to get back to what his new 100% is going to be in the next couple of months. It depends, but it's all dependent on his physical therapy staff, like how these guys manage this process and take him through the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. You heard him say it. You know, the last couple of days, I was able to progress and do something I wasn't able to do just a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. So every day is important. Dak has to be patient. Dak has to be smart. That is the toughest thing for an athlete. He'll get back out there and be able to do the big stuff, but it's about the little things in recovery. Like, oh, man, all right, I just went through 40 plays, 50 plays in practice. Now my knee hurts. Now how do I balance this out? He's going to have a team around him that's going to manage this process, because as a player, you're almost like a NASCAR. That's what we compare ourselves to. In the car, if you're racing Daytona 500, you feel those bolts. If that bolt is loose, you feel the car. It's that detail. So in the professional athlete's body, like, you feel when your VMO's out. You feel when your glute is out. You feel when something isn't firing. So for that guy, he needs to be very detailed in his approach, and he'll be able to bounce back sooner than later, because he has Amari, he has Gallup, he has CeeDee Lamb, he has guys he can lean on, Nick. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a process.
And by the way, that's why if you are a NASCAR driver, it's so important to have a professional like Brandon Marshall on your pit crew to check those lug nuts and bolts to make sure everything's good, as Brandon was just last weekend.
Speaking of lug nuts.
On Dak, I would expect Dak to early on show a little rust. This is the longest he's gone since he redshirted at Mississippi State without playing live action football. And I imagine when he was redshirting at Mississippi State, he at least got some practice reps to where he didn't have the type of layoff that he's going to be dealing with here. Furthermore, once the rust is worn off, I do wonder if the running component of his game is going to be changed. And if you remember the conversation surrounding Dak pre-injury, it was that a lot of folks wished he would run a little bit more, that they would emphasize that aspect of his skill set a little bit more. And now I think that is off the table, certainly early on, if not forever, to where not only because he just suffered the injury, but they just made such a large investment in him. They are tied to him that you need to protect that asset. I wonder if something similar could happen to Lamar at some point. If he gets a big contract and the Ravens are like, all right, now we need to protect you a little bit more. But Wilds, to me, the bigger story here is this, and I don't think this is unfair to say. Dak doesn't just need to, once he feels fully himself, pick up where he left off. Dak needs to be better than he ever has been. Because the fact of the matter is this, other than his rookie season, Dak has never demonstrated that he's a top 5 quarterback. And he needs to be in that conversation moving forward for Dak to prove his worth via the contract, and for the Cowboys, the way they have built this team to work. Because and Brandon's done a really good job, illustrating how terrible the defense was last year, I don't think the defense will be as bad this coming season, but they obviously are trying to be a offense-oriented team. So Dak doesn't just need to pick up where he left off. He needs to be better than he's been over the last few years for this to work.
So specifically, Nick, because if we can show the graphic that I had built, I thought that they paid Dak for the trajectory that he's on. But I want to go back to what you said. Like, everything's gotten better. When you say that he needs to be, he hasn't been top 10, who do you want him to leap ahead of? It feels unrealistic to be like, hey, you need to be better than Patrick Mahomes. You need to be better than Aaron Rodgers, two sort of all-time greats. Who is a guy that you say, like, hey, you need to have a better season than who? Like Kyler? Better than Russ? What is your ranking there?
Okay, so listen, you've got 3 quarterbacks that are in a class by themselves. You have Mahomes, you have Rodgers, and you have Tom Brady. So those 3 guys, put them aside. You just put those 3 guys aside. You then have Deshaun and Russ, who I think are the next guys up. And I'm going to leave Dak out of this. Then you have a massive group that people would argue about the rankings. Lamar, Baker, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan. That's 9 guys. Dak's got to be better than basically that entire group. He doesn't have to be Lamar. He doesn't have to be Mahomes or Rodgers or Brady, and he doesn't quite have to be Deshaun or Russ. But that next group of guys, he's got to be better than the best of them if the Cowboys are going to have a chance to achieve what their actual goals are.
But, Nick, how much of it is Dak and how much of it is Coach McCarthy? Like, he has what he needs. Yeah. I mean, if I'm a wide receiver walking into that locker room, I'm like, this is my guy. This dude can do it all. He has amazing ability to lead. I've seen him lead guys in good times, lead guys in bad times. He has the arm. He has the IQ. Situational football, he's getting better. And when I say getting better, not saying like he was bad, like every year he's taking that leap of, let me ascend to where Russ and Deshaun's at. Let me ascend to where Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers is. So when you look at the guys around him, CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, you got Mari Cooper, you got Collins, you got Smith, you got Looney, you got Zach Martin, you got Zeke. Who's the pressure on? The pressure is on Coach McCarthy. Can Coach McCarthy now take what he was doing in Appleton, Wisconsin, now he's in Frisco, Texas, and see if he can now take his game to a whole nother level? If Coach McCarthy can take his game to a whole nother level, I think we will see Dak Prescott go from mid-tier quarterback to top 5 quarterback because he has everything he needs inside of him and around him.
That's fair. And listen, one of the reasons you guys have been giving me a hard time all week that I picked the Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl last year, one of the reasons I won't be doing it this year is because I should have never believed in the transformation of Mike McCarthy. And last year disabused me of those notions. With that said, Mike McCarthy did not cause Dak Prescott in 4.5 games last year to throw 4 picks and fumble the ball 3 times. So there are things Dak can do to tighten his own game
back
up.
On that.
Maybe, Brandon, some of them maybe we can say were schemed. That's fine, but we also watched those games. Some of them were bad passes, and fumbles are usually on the fumbler. Not always, but usually fumbles are on the fumbler. So there are things Dak can clean up that he is going to be expected to clean up once he's back and fully healthy, Jenna.
And I will just say this real quick. If the Cowboys are going to protect Dak Prescott, at least in the early going from running, staying in the pocket, that puts a lot of pressure on Ezekiel Elliott that you mentioned, Brandon. That's something we haven't really talked about. He didn't have his best year last year. We'll see how much pressure that does put on him in this offense. We got to take a turn. Talk about a little Super 6. They're giving away cash on Sunday. Download the Fox 6 Super 6 app. I'm just going to keep talking. Enter the selection special contest for your shot at a $5,000 guaranteed prize. Answer 6 questions about Sunday's bracket reveal for your free chance to win. With that, we'll take a break. Much more First Things First right after this. Hey, First Things First listeners. I wanted to tell you about our brand new Fox Sports app and website, foxsports.com, reimagined for the modern sports fan. Go ahead. Download the new app right now. You don't even have to pause this episode. Every day on the new app and website, you'll see the top stories in sports. Plus, a rich world of written content, videos, social media, and analytics to give you a 360-degree view of the most important stories of the day. Streaming live TV has never been so easy or elegant. Every Fox Sports game, including all pregame and postgame shows, as well as the televised version of this show, just a click away. For the extra invested fan, we also go deep with real-time wagering lines, trending prop bets, win probability, and key player projections. So download the new Fox Sports app or visit www.foxsports.com.
So good,
well said, Nick.
So
well
good.
said. I think we all echo that. Let's play a little draw in a blank right now. So yesterday, Dak Prescott officially put pen to paper, and then as we all do after signing something, he sat down for 75,000 questions from the media. Brandon, Dak's press conference yesterday was blank.
It's the right thing for so many different reasons. I mean, come on, were you guys really going to break this up? You went out there and drafted this kid with the 135th pick in the 4th round in 2016. And he lit up the league when Tony Romo went down. Then there was a down year, sophomore slump. And since then, he has shown you who he was, and he was more than capable of carrying the torch and being the face of this historic franchise. So I'm just great that they did this in a way where the relationships weren't broken. This is great for Dak. This is great for Jerry Jones. This is great for the NFL. This is what we want to see. We want to see homegrown talent. So great job to the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott and getting this deal done.
Wilds, I might have been a little too literal on this question because I said Dak Prescott's press conference yesterday was what Dallas does best. And I mean the literal press conference. Everything about it looked perfect. They looked like the marquee franchise in the league, and they looked like why they are America's team. Unfortunately for the Cowboys over the last 25 years, press conferences are literally what they've done best as opposed to success on the field. Dak hopes to change that, but it wasn't via Zoom, and Dak was wearing what I imagine is a $2,500 perfectly tailored sport coat.
Agree.
Jerry was ecstatic. Everything about it looked A++ first class, and this is the stuff that Dallas does great, and hopefully it translates for them.
I totally agree with you. It felt like a world-class sort of organization in a world-class performance from the franchise quarterback of the Cowboys. Now, I put textbook. I'm not saying that the Detroit Lions who sent up their coach with a decent suit on and talked about eating his opponent's kneecaps isn't the way to go. But you're going to have a lot of press conferences throughout the year after every game. Take a look at Dallas's press conference yesterday. Take some tips. Also, Eagles, same thing. You know, like, hey, we're going to make it so hard it's going to be simple, or so simple it's going to be easy. Just take a lesson. No eating kneecaps. Just put on a nice suit. Be like Dak Prescott.
Setting an example out there in Dallas. On to New England now, where the Patriots are reportedly receiving trade calls for N'Keal Harry. Feels like there's going to be a lot of moving parts in New England this offseason. Brandon, the Pats fielding N'Keal Harry trade calls is blank.
This is Bill Belichick throwing in the towel. I mean, look at his track record as a general manager, drafting at this position, the wide receiver position and the tight end position, since 2013. It's not good. All these guys, Wiles, I know this is your team, but can you tell me where these guys are now and what happened? Combined for 144 receptions. Didn't Mike Thomas have that in 1 year? 2 years ago? Okay. Michael Thomas down in New Orleans? This is bad. And everybody laughed at me. Everybody said, Brandon, what are you saying? Halfway through the year, when the Patriots started to slide, and I said, let's start talking about Bill Belichick, the general manager. It doesn't matter if you have Cam Newton, doesn't matter if you have Stidham, and I don't care if you bring in Marcus Mariota. If you don't have guys around that can help you and get the job done, then you're not going to have a winning season. This is Bill Belichick throwing in the towel.
I think that's all accurate. I also think fielding N'Keal Harry trade calls is smart. Listen, one of the biggest mistakes in sports is not understanding the sunk cost fallacy. It's one of the biggest mistakes in life. You ever go to dinner with somebody and they're clearly full and they're still eating? You're like, what are you doing? They're like, well, got to get my money's worth. What are you doing tonight? Oh, my God. I'm going to this play. I'm so mad I bought the tickets. You already bought the tickets. You already paid for the food. Now do what makes you happy. You already wasted a first-round pick on N'Keal Harry. Get back what you can. One thing that the Patriots understand better than most teams in sports is the sunk cost fallacy, and they don't allow it to make them double down on bad decisions. But everything Brandon said is correct about their inability to draft this position, Wiles.
Yeah, it was the first time that Belichick drafted a wide receiver in the first round, and it's probably going to be the last. And Brandon, I think you bring up an interesting point. Like, maybe that's just a blind spot for him. He's good at finding little diamonds in the rough, like Hall of Famer Julian Edelman, but he's not great at trying to find like a nice premier wide receiver target. The good news for N'Keal Harry is Cam Newton was very high on him, and your buddy Ocho Cinco the other day tweeted out, like, what weren't you good at? He's like, being wide receiver for the Patriots. So maybe it is a little bit of just doesn't fit with the scheme, a la Ocho Cinco. Hope N'Keal Harry has success, but it's probably not going to be in New England.
Nick, I bought, and I hated Bikram, but I bought a pack of 30, and I felt like I had it to go every day for a month, and it was brutal. I didn't know about the sunk cost fallacy thing. I'm never doing that again. On to Chicago, Nair. According to a report, the Bears are desperate for a quarterback. It was truly awful. It was a 90-minute class. It was so hot. Never doing that again, but I bought so many of them. Might be ready to unload a truckload to get a Russell Wilson. Didn't say that in the brochure. I got to read this. Listen, according to a report, the Bears are desperate for a quarterback. They might be ready to unload a truckload, a ton, to get a Russell Wilson, even a Deshaun Watson, maybe. They clearly need someone. Hey, Brandon, Bikram aside, hot yoga as well. The team that should be most desperate to trade for Russ or Deshaun is blank.
You just mentioned them, the Chicago Bears. I mean, when you look at Trubisky and Foles, they're at the bottom of the league in every quarterback category. Hell, they had one game where they threw for over 300 yards. They need to make a move here. They need a face of the franchise. They need to get this franchise back where it belongs. I was there, Miss Virginia McCaskey. She set the tone every single day. She's 98 years of age. And we didn't talk about it publicly, but we knew from George McCaskey on down, her son, who now runs the team, we knew that They wanted her to go out with the win, holding up that Lombardi trophy. If you don't understand the history of the National Football League, you got to look it up. But a lot of it runs through Chicago and Mr. George Halas, her father. So they want to get this done. So they are the most desperate team. And we know they've already reached out. They've already told Russ, we'll give you whatever you wanted, whatever you need, and we'll give you the keys. What type of decisions do you want to make? So the answer is the Chicago Bears.
I think the Bears are desperate. I think there's a team that at least should be more desperate, and that's Denver. Listen, Bronco fans, people think Bills fans hate me. Bronco fans really hate me. And last year, I had the audacity to say the Broncos were going to go 4-12. And oh my God, you should have heard the terribly produced podcast that took issue with that. Well, I was wrong. They went 5-11. But when you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and by the way, the Raiders might end up with Russell Wilson, you can't be trotting Drew Lock out there. Denver has gotten quarterback right once post John Elway, and it was when Peyton Manning opted to go there. They have not been able to draft this position, so trade for this position if you want any chance of competing with Mahomes, Herbert, and if the Raiders end up getting one of these guys themselves. So it's Denver Wilds.
Brandon? You know, T.O. says, get your popcorn ready. Get your helmet ready, buddy. I'm going to go with the Jets here. AFC East open now. My poor Patriots don't know what they're doing. The Dolphins don't quite know what they're doing. They don't believe in Tua. They're putting Fitzmagic in every time. And whether or not you believe in Josh Allen, I don't know if he's going to run the league for 20 years like Tom Brady did. So I would say the Jets have a real chance here. New coach. They've got a little promise after, flirting with going, a full 0-16. I think the Jets should give everything they got, try to get Russ there or try to get Deshaun and try to give Sam Darnold a fresh start somewhere else.
That means maybe we lose Brandon if that happens. Speaking of quarterbacks, back talking Dak Prescott now. Deal is done. We'll tell you why he's got the Super Bowl next on his to-do list. This is First Things First.
Hey, First Things First listeners. It's Charlotte Wilder here to tell you about my new podcast with Mark Titus called the People's Sports Podcast. It comes out every Thursday, and Mark and I take one of the big stories of the week, and then we go off on tangents you never saw coming. This might mean that we start talking about the Dodgers winning the World Series and end up wondering if Knicks fans deserve happiness. Or begin with LeBron's greatness and end up drafting our ultimate beer league softball team made up of old athletes. Whatever it is, the only rule of the show is that it has to be fun and funny, because these days we could all use as many laughs as we can get. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts and come down weird sports rabbit holes with us. We can't wait to have you. Now, back to First Things First.
But I heard you saying, Colin, the Packers need to put on, I think you said some leather pants and unbutton their shirt down to their navel. Yeah. And I don't know if you were being literal or figurative there, but I know a guy they could acquire who I would imagine has some leather pants, and I think very often wears his shirt unbuttoned to the navel. And that's Odell Beckham Jr. You don't want him in Cleveland anymore. No. You got the 28th pick of the draft. You've got Devontae Adams. Odell, this would be what I'm hoping for my friend Odell, the Randy Moss career arc, unbelievable first stop, kind of confusing second stop, and then he finally gets with a superstar quarterback, and he is nails in his third stop.
Nick's got plans for OBJ. We'll discuss that in a bit. Set that aside, though, talk some hoops. Kevin Durant's been sidelined for a month, but apparently he's going to continue to be sidelined. Still not 100%. He's set for more imaging on that injured leg next week, that injured hamstring, with head coach Steve Nash saying hopefully that'll help figure out when KD will be able to return. We got Chris Broussard with us now. Broussard, how worried should Nets fans be with Durant's lingering hamstring injury?
I think worried is too strong. Two more appropriate words for me are, one, surprised. Remember, when he got injured in mid-February, it was like he'll be out at least 2 games. So we're thinking, okay, this is nothing big. Now it's going to be 10, maybe 11, maybe 12. Who knows? So I'm surprised at this. The good news is that doctors are saying that it's not related to the Achilles. I'm not a doctor. I'll just take their word for it. But that's good news if that indeed is true. The second word is concerned. And it's not just the injury, or it's not even so much the injury to Durant. I'm concerned because at some point, they got to get their big three on the court together. You know, what they're trying to do is already fairly unprecedented. You know, bring three superstars together and drop them into a lineup, and they win a championship right away. We saw Miami's big three couldn't do that. Remember, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain couldn't do that. Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, Hakeem Olajuwon couldn't do that. And now they're going to do it playing just a handful of games. They got 35 games left. I would love to see them play 25 to 30 of them with their big three together. Now, I get it and I agree. Kevin Durant, more than any other superstar, can fit seamlessly into a lineup because of the nature of his game. Doesn't over-dribble, great jump shooter. Even his personality, he should be able to fit in. However, it's still an adjustment. And the role players have to adjust to having another superstar on the floor. Defensively, what's it going to look like? We already know that's a concern for this team. So that's my concern. Like, it's hard to imagine them playing 15, 20 games together as a big three and going into the playoffs and just running through everybody and winning the championship. I'm not saying it's impossible because they look fantastic, but it's hard to fathom and, again, wholly unprecedented.
Well, look, guys, as the resident Nets super fan, I'm super concerned here. Because as a player, you know, and I tried to articulate this and I tried to explain this when we were just talking about Dak Prescott and will he pick up where he left off? Well, your ankle goes, and now all of a sudden you start overcompensating. The body is like, oh, it's altered, so it's trying to figure out how to adapt, and now your knee go, your hip go, your lower back. These professional athletes' bodies are like NASCARs. If there's a little boat off, those drivers feel it. You feel it as an athlete. You hear guys come in the locker room right now. You come in the locker room, they're like, oh, my glute, my VMO's off. And you start seeing them doing some exercises, some corrective exercises to get that thing firing. So now you got KD. KD coming off of Achilles. And now all of a sudden, he have another nagging injury in a hamstring. This hamstring, if it's not dealt with correctly, it's going to be around for a long time. You have guys that can come back in 3 to 4 weeks, and then there's some guys it takes 3 to 4 months if it's not dealt with right. So it is concerning that he has to go in for more imaging. When I was playing for the Seattle Seahawks, that's what pretty much ended my career, coming off an ankle injury, and then all of a sudden it went up the chain, and then my hamstring went. Going back to my second year in the NFL, I had a quad injury. That quad injury put me out for 4 months. So this is concerning. And like you said, Chris, the other part too is these guys only played 7 games together. Now, they will be fine if he comes back towards the end of the season and he's healthy, because he is not the type of guy like LeBron James. LeBron James, if you take him out of that offense, everything drastically changed. These guys are still thriving. These guys are still finding a way to get it done without him. And now you insert this dude who is butter. He's a walking bucket, and he also is the ultimate team guy. They'll be all right. But this injury is a big concern, Nick.
Well, and listen, they also need KD to be full go on both ends. He's their most important defensive player, and he has now played 20 games of basketball in 674 days. And so now we saw him when he started this season playing almost as well as he had at any point in his career, but it still is concerning. But yeah, like, I'm going to describe a team to you. This team was put together over the summer. Their second best player has a spotty at best postseason resume. They lack any form of rim protection. And their starting 5 has no minutes together to speak of. Who am I describing? Well, it's this year's Nets and last year's Clippers. And eventually, America's going to understand that what happened to last year's Clippers is the path the Nets are barreling towards. Now, not necessarily blowing a 3-1 lead in the second round. I'm not assigning that to them. But where they were ordained championship favorites without us ever getting to see these guys play together. That is very concerning. And so I do think that it is something that has to be discussed as a giant, not just a, well, let's monitor it, but something that has to start being factored into championship odds and start being factored into how good you think this team will become the postseason. Because, Wilds, maybe you disagree. If Durant's out, I don't think they can get out of round 2. But even with Durant, if they've played 12 games together, then I don't know if you can expect them to have the cohesiveness and continuity it's going to take to beat Milwaukee and Philly in consecutive series, much less beat the Lakers in the finals.
Okay, so if Steve Nash came out today, Broussard, and said, you know what, we're going to shut down KD for the entire rest of the season. It's an imaginary world now. We're going to see him in the playoffs. I wouldn't be that worried about it for the reasons that you talked about it. A, his demeanor kind of fits in with like, all right, I'll do what I need to do. 2, his game sort of works with that. 3, he's a basketball savant. He can watch the games, and I think there's more chemistry there from him watching and playing with those guys before. He's played with Kyrie enough, buddies with Kyrie, and he played with James Harden in Oklahoma City. So I'm not as worried. I don't think it's a fair comparison to say like, this is like the Clippers when Kawhi and Paul George never had a history of friendship or playing together. So I'm not nearly as worried as everybody else.
Yeah, I would be incredibly concerned. I would be worried if that was the point. You know, if he can't play the rest of the season. Because, look, Milwaukee, we like to write them off because of what's happened in the last 2 postseasons. But they're not going to be easy. They're not just going to run through the Bucks. And Philadelphia, the same thing.
True.
So these are world-class teams that they're going against. I just have never seen it. Nobody's ever seen it, Wilds. Like to drop, they would have had 7 games together. And you're right. I said it. Durant fits in great, but that's unimaginable that a team could play 7 games together and win a championship. Because that's what it's about. It's not about getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not about even getting to the finals, especially now you bring in a Blake Griffin. It's about winning a championship. And so, yeah, I would think they couldn't win it if Durant's out the rest of the season.
So I got some historians around me, NBA historians around me. You guys tell me the last time we seen a team that had 3 prolific scorers like this. The offense is what's going to get it done. The offense is what's going to get them there. These guys will be fine if they're healthy going into the postseason. And, Nick, you keep talking about, comparing this team to the Clippers. Last year was the perfect storm for LeBron James and the Lakers. Why? Because of his leadership. He is great. We know, all right, he's in that conversation as the GOAT. He had the number 2 player in the NBA last year, not right now, but in AD playing lights out. So you got a Clippers team that didn't want to be in the bubble. Restart, there was 2 teams that said, we didn't want to play, and they were one of them. And then the other team, they had the best leader in all of sports. LeBron James galvanizes his team. So when you talk about the Clippers and comparing them to the Nets, you can't do it because it's a totally different situation. These dudes want to play. These dudes are just banged up right now. Yes, they've only played 7 games. It is a huge concern that KD is now dealing with this nagging hamstring injury. But the offense, that type of offense, these 3 guys, you got 3 guys that can give you 30 in a given night, and that's a problem. And I know you're going to talk about James Harden in the playoffs. I'm telling you right now, look at this kid's mindset. His mindset changed in a bubble. Okay. This is a different player than you guys have seen 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
Okay, well, I mean, the question is a different player than we saw a few months ago when in his final game in the bubble, I think he was 4 for 15, or that was game 7 against the Thunder. But that's neither here nor there. He's 2 for 11, I think, his final game in the bubble. But that's neither here nor there. Couple things. One is, I keep hearing the Lakers, it was the perfect storm for them when actually they were the team most disadvantaged by the bubble. They lost all their home games. They had to play a red-hot Portland team in round 1 that otherwise wouldn't have made the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there either. The one time we have seen a big three microwave together and win a title was the 08 Celtics. And what did that 08 Celtics team do? I think they started 24-3. That's people can fact check me on that. I remember they started red hot. They were awesome from the word go. They had a ton of games together that season, and it helped carry them to a title. But the other problem with Wild's hypothetical, whether it's Kevin Durant is out another few weeks or he's out another couple months and then is back for the playoffs, it's not how Durant fits in with Harden and Kyrie. It's how, and you know this for every champion ever, you need some moments from role players. And Bruce Brown or TLC or the Claxton kid or wherever they fit in Blake Griffin, those guys will be finding out what their roles are. And then if all of a sudden that is drastically changed right before the biggest games of their life.
So Dwight can do it.
All right, well, yeah, so we should mention for KD, this again will be his third imaging scan. So it's not taken lightly, which is why he is going to sit out. We'll have more on that in a bit. We got to get back to some Dak Prescott now. He's got a Super Bowl
talking crazy like
in his sights now that his deal's done. Yeah, when it's too crazy, we just cut his cable. You think that Dak can lead the Cowboys back to the promised land? That's next. First things first. He's not going to be happy.
What?
Nick is not going to be happy. The 2021 Big East Tournament continues today at noon Eastern as Georgetown battles top-seeded Villanova. Then you got Seton Hall taking on St. John's, followed by Butler Creighton and DePaul UConn. A lot of things going on all right here on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. Back to the NFL now. Big day for Dak Prescott yesterday. Officially put pen to paper. Unless he e-signed. Can you e-sign a big contract? He just signed it. Dak signing the richest contract in Cowboys history. Locking him in for 4 prime years. 4 prime shots at a Super Bowl, guys. Dak had said yesterday, quote, "My plan is to get a parade to Dallas." Hopefully he meant a Super Bowl one. It'd be weird if he meant any other kind of parade. We got Coach Mangini, Eric Mangini, joining us now. Coach, good morning. We'll get to you in a second, but start with you, Nick. Is it fair to expect Dak to win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years after what he said?
Listen, I think fairness is a little overrated. I don't know if it's fair, but it's what's going to happen. But I do think we do have the ability to be fair in evaluating quarterbacks and not just do Wild's beloved caveman quarterback wins, Jimmy G great, Jared Goff great, Deshaun Watson terrible metric. Like, does anybody think Deshaun Watson was bad last year? Does anybody? Because his team got the 3rd pick of the draft. No. People can look at these things through nuanced eyes. And I think that if Dak plays at a level that, for example, Coach, Deshaun Watson played at last year, and the defense is just terrible, and they go 9-7 and win their division because the division stinks, and they play in a first round or wild card weekend playoff game, and they lose the playoff game 42-35. I don't think people will be like, well, Dak failed, because I think we can look at it through, with the ability for nuance and evaluate. It's not all the quarterback. But I do think it is fair, Coach, to expect Dak to play at a Super Bowl caliber throughout the bulk of this contract, to play at an MVP-ish level throughout the bulk of this contract, because that is what he is now quite literally being paid to do. So I think it's yes and no, and I know that's not the best television answer, but I hope I expressed myself correctly there. I think we can tell, is a quarterback playing great? Dak's expectation is to play great from now on.
Yeah, it's goes back to the old adage, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that's a situation with Dak right now. And unfortunately, the team hasn't changed by signing Dak Prescott. All that's happened is he's gotten a lot more money. And if anything, they've become less flexible and less able to continue adding parts because they've got to compensate for his contract. So as much as he wants a parade, there's a lot of people that want a parade. Patrick Mahomes wants one, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the list goes on. And what will be frustrating, and I understand your point about nuance evaluation of the quarterback, but it feels like oftentimes when we talk about Dak, we talk about all the things he needs from a support perspective. And when you sign a contract like this for money like this, and now you are the ultimate force multiplier. That's the expectation, that you are gonna make the players around you better, even if they're not elite at the position. You're gonna support your defense because of how many points you score and how you control the clock. It changes. It changes when you're being placed in this hierarchy.
Yeah, well, Coach, I don't expect them to. I think they can because they have a quarterback. And there's two things I look for. You know, you got to have a quarterback and you got to play some defense. So we know they have a lot of work to do on the defensive side. But when you look at Dak Prescott, he can lead this team to a Super Bowl. He is more than capable. Physically, mentally, he has it all. And then when you look at the NFC, I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers out there, older quarterback. I don't know how many more years he has left, and they don't seem to be able to get over the hump. Like, this is an organization that should have won multiple Super Bowls with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like they have underperformed and underachieved in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Seattle, Russell Wilson, older quarterback, will still have some years left. He wants to play until he's 42, 43. I don't know if he's capable of doing that, but I know he has a strong mentality and he can potentially do it. But the magic in Seattle, even if they get through this phase that they're in right now, the magic seems to be gone in Seattle. So when you look at how the landscape of the NFC at the quarterback position, I mean, he is right there. This is a guy that can get it done. If Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones do their job and correct those things on the other side of the ball. Offensively, I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep all this together, Wilds, but they got three guys that can be a number one wide receiver in half the league. The offensive line, they're studs. They're back healthy. You got Collins. You got Smith. You got Looney. You have Zach Martin. And then you got Zeke in the backfield. So Zeke, he needs to get it done. Zeke needs that bounce back. He needs to have a bounce back year and not come back the way he did last year. If they do that in the next couple years, they can keep things together while they're patching up that defense. There's a real chance that they can find themselves in the Super Bowl.
See, I think they've got a shot at the Super Bowl, and I think that's all you can ask for. And Nick, I think the $40 million number, just because it's a little bit under Mahomes, is clouding everybody's vision, and it's not necessarily taking into account how much the position costs, period. Because when you look at it like, $40 million, like, yeah, it's a lot more than $0. It's $40 million more than zero. But, I don't know, you paid Matt Ryan $30 million. You paid Tannehill $29, you paid Jimmy G $27, you're paying Derek Carr $25, you're paying Taysom Hill $16. So when you compare them to that, it's not like this number is so outrageous. It's just the going rate for the position. And I feel like the media narrative attached to $40 million is putting undue pressure on him. So no, he doesn't have to carry them to the Super Bowl. It's probably unfair expectation, but that's the cost of doing business if you want an upper tier quarterback. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely. And Jenna, earlier, you were very fascinated by the sunk cost fallacy, so I'm going to do another little behavioral economics thing. What you're talking about, Wilds, is anchoring. You go to a steakhouse when Coach Mangini loses a bet to me, and we go to a very fancy steakhouse, and the cheapest steak on the menu is $56. And the best steak on the menu is $96. The spread is what you're looking at. You're anchored at $56. It's like, well, I'll just get the bone-in the ribeye, because it's $96. It's Coach's money anyway, and it's only $40 more. So what you're saying, Wilds, is you're anchored at $30 million for a quarterback. So Dak is only a $10 million spread. The question then is, Coach, what can you get for $10 million? And can Dak provide surplus value there? You can get an all-pro linebacker for $10 million. Levante David just proved it to you, right? He signed for 2 years, $25 million, $12 million bucks. So is Dak Prescott good enough to give you the value of Ryan Tannehill, for instance, and the value of Levante David? That's the question you're asking. And and I know this is very rough math, But when you're putting a team together, Coach, those are the questions you're asking yourself, right? Can this player provide enough surplus value if I'm going to make him one of the highest paid guys at his position to discount the fact we're not going to be able to have Levante David or whomever we would be inserting in that spot?
Yeah, I think the main lesson here is be careful who you invite to dinner. I mean, that's one of the things, I made the mistake with Nick, and I won't make that mistake again. But then going back to the steak analogy, when you buy a $96 steak, you shouldn't be complaining about the potatoes. You shouldn't be talking about, well, is the broccoli going to be good enough? Are we going to have, is the bread going to be okay? No, you have a $96 steak. That steak better be the highlight of your meal. And so that's what Dak is. He's that $96 steak. So I don't want to hear about the potatoes. I don't want to hear about, the hash, whatever Nick ordered in excess. And I thought Brandon made a bunch of points. A bunch of good points about the quality of offensive players he has around him. Those take away the excuses. You've got supposedly an elite running back. You've got supposedly elite offensive linemen. You've got some elite playmakers. Okay, you're an elite quarterback. Are there going to be issues on the defense? Yeah, the offense makes 3 times as much as the defense. So, you're going to have to compensate somewhere when, everybody's getting paid and you're in this situation.
Resident GM, I feel like you overcomplicated this whole steak dinner thing. I thought you were just simply going to say that if you go and you buy a $96 steak, you're not going to be able to afford like the lobster mac and cheese and the potatoes that Coach talked about. You just totally went the other way.
There you go.
Yeah, Well, the lobster mac. Can you get an appetizer? You can't get the appetizer. Yeah. The appetizer is the kicker, and then the lobster mac might be the wide receiver or the defensive back. So you overcomplicated the story for me.
My
buddy.
bad. I apologize.
I
was trying to explain anchoring to Jenna. I was trying to do behavioral.
Take me out for dinner. All I do is order a large salad or 2 medium salads, and they put it in a large bowl. Hey, Dak's not on the move anytime soon, but Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, different story for them. How desperate are the Bears to get one of these 2 stud quarterbacks? Next on First Things First. And no bread for me, Coach, just the salad.
Adjust other people.
Back here, First Things First. So it's been an interesting offseason for Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. Both unhappy, both a little disgruntled, both open to a trade. Might I interest anyone in the Windy City, perhaps? Gentlemen, the Bears are reportedly, quote, desperate and willing to cough up a, quote, boatload of draft picks for either quarterback. I like when I put air quotes, even though you guys are seeing video. Coach Mangini back with us now. Brandon, that's a big word. Desperate. Only used it a couple times in my dating life. What do you make of your former team's, quote, desperation for one of these star quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know if they're desperate or if they're just ready. They're super passionate, and it starts with one person in that building. She's 98 years of age. That's Virginia McCaskey. I was there for 3 years, 2012 to 2014, and everybody in the building knew that George McCaskey, her son who runs the team, wanted her to go out with the Lombardi Trophy. And that's what we work for every single day. That was Brian Urlacher. That was Devin Hester. That was Jay Cutler. That was Julius Peppers. And I can go on and on and on. Lovie Smith and any other coach that came after that. Everybody knew what was the deal when they came into that building. And that's why you see George McCaskey on the sideline, and he never smiles, and he's so intense and he's so passionate. That's his energy every single day. I don't know if you walk in a Cincinnati Bengals organization if you feel that. I don't know if you feel that when you walk in the Miami Dolphins facility, and you see that from Stephen Ross. There's some organizations, it's like, man, these people really want to win a Super Bowl. That's all they're about. It's been, 30-something years, 36 years since they've won a Super Bowl. They're still talking about the 1985 Bears. You walk into that city, you go into a restaurant, that's all they're going to talk about. If Mike Ditka, anybody on that team walk in, they get a free steak. They don't pay for anything there. That's how beloved they are, and that's how passionate those fans are. And it starts with Virginia McCaskey, trickles down to George McCaskey, and it goes all the way down to everybody in that building. So I think that I don't think they're desperate. I just think that they're super passionate. They're trying to figure out, how do we get this done?
Yeah, there's a saying that says you should never shop hungry. And when you're searching for a trade partner, you want the hungriest possible group. And typically that's a GM and head coach who are on the verge of potentially losing their job, or a GM and head coach who feel like they're one player away from making a push for the Super Bowl. And those are the two targeted groups. And you talk about, Brandon, the passion of ownership there. The GM feels that. The head coach feels that. And they know that their best opportunity to get over that hump, that 8-8 hump of where they are, is to go get an elite quarterback. But the reality is there's one guy they can't get in Houston, and with Russell Wilson, that's an impossible deal. It would cost $30 million in dead money to the Seahawks for that to happen. So as desperate as they are and as willing as they are to get something done, I don't think they're going to find a trade partner.
Yeah, the most dangerous thing for a fan is to have a desperate GM. Because, listen, here's the deal with Ryan Pace. His first big decision was hiring John Fox. John Fox went 14-34. His second big decision was they had the 7th pick of the draft. He's spinning on a wide receiver named Kevin White. Kevin White finished his career with 25 catches. His next big decision was trading up for a quarterback. Mahomes, Watson, don't even meet with Watson, Mitch Trubisky. And now Ryan Pace knows, man, if I make a massive move and it doesn't work, well, the fans are going to be fans of the Bears forever. But I'm only going to be an employee of the Bears for another few months. So that's not going to be my problem. So you see this very often in the NBA, where a GM knows he's going to be out if they don't make the playoffs, and all of a sudden you're trading a bunch of future firsts for a mediocre player because you're trying to get over the hump. So it puts franchises in a bad spot. But Brandon has mentioned Virginia McCaskey. He said she's 98 years old. Here's another reason the Bears might be desperate, and this is not an exaggeration. The last time Virginia McCaskey, her team, had a quality quarterback, she was 25 years old, and his name was Sid Luckman, and it was the late 40s. Do you know who the highest-rated quarterback in Bears history is? Mitch Trubisky. Look it up. That's a true stat. That's a true stat. It's not, I'm sorry, listen, I forgot your guy Jay Cutler, but Trubisky actually has a higher rating. They've had 5 quarterbacks in history of the league. They have 5 quarterbacks in the history of their franchise who have 10,000 passing yards. Eric Kramer, Jim McMahon, another Jim, who is it? Jim Harbaugh, Jay Cutler, and Mitch Trubisky. There is, without a doubt, Jay Cutler is the second best quarterback they have had or the best quarterback they have had since Luckman. Luckman retired in 1950. So this is a massive market with a passionate fan base, Wilds, who,
amazing market.
If you dangle in front of them Russell Wilson, I think the fans would say there is no price too high. You got to eat all that money? Well, okay.
Oh, they're ready.
We'll pay whatever it takes, because I think that they are. It's an underrated story that we have thought it's basically been post-World War II. The best quarterback the Bears have had is Jay Cutler. That's a wild situation, Wilds.
So, I have fond memories of Sid Luckman. And here's another weird stat. The Bears have never had a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards, Coach. It blew my mind. Last year, 12 guys threw for 4,000 yards, one of them being Justin Herbert, who was embryo minus 12 the last time the Bears won the Super Bowl. But the article from Jason La Canfora talked about organizational desperation. So that the Bears organization is like, we're the Bears. We've never had a 4,000-yard passer. We play defense. We're old school Refrigerator Perry, Richard Dent style football. Have you felt in your coaching career that organizations want to play a certain way, and now they're basically going to have to turn the battleship? Be like, oh, guess what? It's a passing league now. Let's go all in and try to get one of these elite quarterbacks. Or do you think the Bears are just going to have to stay the course? Like, you are who you are. You're the Bears. You just kind of play defense. It's cold.
I don't think it's a function of we're just going to play this way or we're stuck in our ways. Everybody wants an elite quarterback. But unfortunately, they're really, really hard to find. And the Bears are in a situation where they're 29th right now in the NFL in salary cap space. They've got over 20 free agents that they have to deal with. It's not like they're loaded with draft picks or extra draft picks to make these potential trades. They're not getting Russell Wilson because it costs Seattle too much money, not that it costs Chicago too much money. So look, Wilds, they should just lean into that defensive identity. Yeah. This is more of a lean in year than it is, hey, we're going to be able to go get one of these elite guys. And then the other part of this is, if you're ownership and you've seen the mistakes that have been made by management, how excited are you to leverage the future of the organization, by this current administration?
Also, can I just quickly apologize to Jay Cutler or else Brandon and my relationship will be damaged forever. I'm sorry, Jay, the underrated player. I apologize, Jay Cutler. I retract the Jay Cutler slander. I retract all of it.
Back to our top story. Hey, did Jerry Jones admit yesterday he overpaid for Dak Prescott? That story next. First thing first. Sunday on Fox, the best season ever continues in the desert. The NASCAR Cup Series heading to Phoenix for the Instacart 500. Action begins Sunday, 3:30 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app. All right, we're back here talking Dak Prescott. It is finally official. Dak signed his contract yesterday. 4 years, $160 million. Now we'll have to find something else to talk about for the next couple of years. How about this? As we all know, with great dollars come great expectations. Dickens wrote a whole book about it. Here's Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on how they got this deal done.
The truth is, most anything that I've ever been involved in that ended up being special, I overpaid for. Every time, to the end. Anytime I've tried to get a bargain, I got just that. It was a bargain in a lot of ways and not up to standard.
I feel like that's not completely a compliment to Dak. Nick, did the Cowboys overpay for Dak Prescott?
Well, if he stays the same quarterback he's been his whole career aside from his rookie season, yeah, they did. Now, if he can recapture some of that rookie season, then no, they didn't. And I think sometimes numbers can be misleading, but here I think they fit the eye test. His rookie season, he was phenomenal. His second season, he had, as Brandon put it, a sophomore slump. And since then, he's been pretty consistent, where he's been right on the fringe of being a top 10 quarterback, top 10-ish quarterback in this league. Well, now he's got to move up a tier, Brandon. He's got to become top 5-ish. He doesn't have to be Mahomes, and he doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers, and he doesn't have to be Tom Brady. I can't believe Tom Brady's still there, but he is, I guess. But he's got to be. He's got to at least be down the street from Deshaun Watson. He's got to be knocking on the door to borrow sugar from Russell Wilson. Like, he can't be living on the same cul-de-sac as Derek Carr anymore. That much I know. So I think that you disagree with me? I think he's got to jump up. I think he's got to jump up from where he was the last few years.
Hey, I may have to take that title from you, the resident GM. I mean, you're disappointing me with that answer.
No.
Jerry Jones, this is a bargain deal for Jerry Jones. Nick, you know that. This is how it works. Quarterback goes to market, player go out to market, player sets the bar. Yeah. And then the next guy who comes, it doesn't matter where they're at. If they are one of the face of the franchises, a premier guy, then they jump them. So he got a bargain because Dak Prescott, think about this, Dak Prescott could have easily got more money in another place. We just talked about the Chicago Bears and asked the question, are they desperate for Russell Wilson? You don't think the Chicago Bears would pay Dak Prescott $43, $44, $45 million? Come on. This is how things work. Russ jumped both Rodgers and Matt Ryan in 2019. Wentz jumped a bunch of guys, not Russ. Goff jumped Wentz. Deshaun jumped Russ. Mahomes jumped everyone. Now Dak jumps everyone but Mahomes. So if Dak Prescott really wanted to lean into his leverage and say, you know what, I'll play another year, or you know what, trade me, the Chicago Bears would have called and probably offered them more than what he got. So I disagree with you there, buddy.
All right, Nick, I'm gonna do a cross-sport analogy. Tell me if you buy this. The NBA, we've talked a lot about that there are only a handful of guys that you can ride to an NBA championship. LeBron being one, Durant being one, Steph being one. And then there's a lot of guys like, they're good. I don't know if they're championship caliber. I don't know if they can be the best guy on a championship team. It's always your knock on Tatum. But don't you think that if we divide the quarterbacks, just not necessarily in half, but just take it to the haves and the have-not, you can win us a championship or you can't. And about $30 million is the line of demarcation. And the guys who make above it, Mahomes, Deshaun, Rodgers, Russ, they can win it. And the guys who make slightly below 30, Tannehill can't do it. Jimmy G, you know they want to jettison Jimmy G because of that darn pass. He can't win it. They decided he can't win it. Derek Carr can't win it. I don't know if Tannehill can win it. So don't you think, whether or not you overpay or not, like that it's less, it's $5 million, it's $6 million, it's $10 million. It's just like, look, he's a guy who can win you the Super Bowl, and there's a lot of guys who can't. Is it that simple?
Well, yeah, I think it was smart for the Cowboys to re-sign Dak. I think they had to because of the point you're making, Wilds. But I also think it's dangerous to talk about the precedent of other quarterbacks who have had record-breaking or near record-breaking deals and not acknowledge some of those were massive mistakes. You mentioned Jared Goff on your list, Brandon. It just took 2 first-round picks to get rid of him. You mentioned Carson Wentz on your list. Carson Wentz doesn't play for that team anymore. Kirk Cousins got a record-breaking deal from Minnesota. How do they feel about that? You know, like if truth serum, do they feel like they are getting their money's worth there? He hasn't been terrible. He's been the same guy he was in Washington, by the way. A good-ish quarterback. So I'm happy Dak got his money, but that's separate from if I'm a Cowboys fan, am I going to look back favorably on this contract? I think Dak has to get a little bit better. Let me ask you this, Brandon. Do you think Nick, the Cowboys signed Dak?
Let me address.
Yeah, please.
Before you ask your question, let me just address something you said. But that's the power of free agency, Nick. It takes one team, and we know that as players, right? So what you're saying is correct. But the Chicago Bears, we're just talking about them. They're desperate. The Jets, they're desperate. These are teams that want to get back there, and there's always one team every year that's going to say, you know what, I will overpay for that guy. Now, to push it forward, and I know you have go to your question. Go to your question.
No, and I agree with you, by the way, which is why Dak had the leverage, because the Cowboys knew if he did hit true free agency, if this is overpaying, someone was going to massively overpay because there are not enough of these human beings alive that can do this. Like there's only like 12 of them alive that can be a high-level quarterback, so those guys are going to get a ton of money. But the question I would have for you is, if Dak over the next 3 years is by all metrics the 10th best quarterback in football, is that good enough? Because I would say no. And I know we're parsing. I think he's got to be like the 5th or 6th best quarterback in football for the Cowboys really to have a chance.
I get it. I understand it. He's the face of the franchise. He's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But this is the ultimate team sport. Like, it takes everybody. So, yes, you have Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott continues, pick up where he left off last year, on pace to throw for 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 12 picks or whatever it is, and that defense is better, then they have a chance. If Coach McCarthy is better, then they have a chance. If Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones do their job, they have a chance. So, yes, he is the face of the franchise. He's getting paid $40 million, but it takes all those guys in the locker room. CeeDee Lamb can't fumble the ball. He has to come down with that one catch. You got Amari Cooper has to do his job. He can't go out there and play when he want to play. And sometimes, like, you know what? I don't have Dak, so, you know, I'm just going to chill. I'm going to chill on the backside. No, that can't happen. It takes everybody. So, yes, he is the face of the franchise, but it's going to take all of those guys.
Brandon says the Bears would pay about $45 million for Dak Prescott. What do you think they'd pay for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson? That might be a conversation we're having real soon. It's next. First things first. If you like Big East tournament basketball, I got something for you. The 2021 tournament continues today. Noon Eastern, Georgetown battles top seed Villanova. Then Seton Hall takes on St. John's, followed by Butler Creighton and DePaul UConn, all right here on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. And it will not be in black and white. It'll probably be in color. Time now for stories to start your morning. Sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve. We're going to head to Dallas, where the hard part's over. Dak signed his contract yesterday, made it official. Richest in Cowboys history, 4 years, $160 million. That was the hard part. Now comes the harder part. How about living up to the lofty expectations of being the guy under center in Dallas? Here's Dak on what this deal means to him.
Grew up a Dallas Cowboy fan. Never in a million years did I imagine not being a Cowboy once I put on this uniform and put on this star. So through it all, through the 2 years, I guess you can say, or more, there was never a slight doubt in my mind that I wouldn't wear the star for the rest of my life. And as Charlotte told me a couple of days ago, is that when you sign that line, you're a Cowboy forever and you can't get out. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited to be here and to never leave. And I'm excited for what this organization, what this team, what the fans are going to get. And I'm excited just to go do it, and just to know that this is my home. I'm not leaving. I'm a Cowboy, and this is only the beginning. Is just so much excitement for everybody that is involved and invested.
Dak Prescott, fancy new blue suit. He's happy. We're happy for him. Brandon, how much pressure now is on Dak to live up to the hype of being the Cowboys franchise quarterback?
It shouldn't be any added pressure. As a competitor and as the face of the franchise, that's just organic. That's what comes with it. To me, the pressure needs to be on Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones. They own the damn Dallas Cowboys. The pressure needs to be on Dan Quinn, Coach McCarthy. The Joneses, they're the ones that hired McCarthy. They could have had so many different people. They chose him. So when you think about Dak Prescott, this dude has everything he needs from a physical standpoint, a mental standpoint to get the job done. He is good enough. The defense, if they roll that defense out this year, they don't have a chance. And then at the end of the season, you know, who are we going to be talking about? Well, Dak Prescott. We're going to be breaking down him and micromanaging Dak. Well, he's the reason. He's the reason. Well, when that defense is at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the defense's category statistically, then you don't have a chance, and that's where the focus needs to be. We understand that with more money comes more problems. We understand that he is the face of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's the quarterback, and there's a lot of weight on his shoulders. But at the end of the day, to me, the pressure needs to be more on Jerry Jones, Coach McCarthy, Coach Dan Quinn. They need to do their jobs, and everything else will fall in line.
I agree with that to a degree. Here's where I'll push back. I would say Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, the team builders there, have done a hell of a job building one side of the ball. You talk about it all the time, Brandon. They've got three receivers who all three on different teams or on specific teams could be a number one receiver. They have Zeke, who once upon a time was universally considered the best between the tackles runner in football. That's now Derrick Henry's title, but I don't think anyone looks at Zeke as a bad player. When healthy, they have a good offensive line, and now they have Dak. Now, the defense obviously needs some work from a personnel perspective and from a schematic coaching perspective. But I want to throw a question back to you, Brandon, and I apologize, Wilds, but I just want to ask Brandon a question quickly, which is, let's just assume for a moment the Cowboys have the definition of a league average defense next year. They're, between 15th and 17th in every major category. They're just an average defense. Do you think if they have an average defense, Dak can be good enough for them to be a true Super Bowl contender, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league? Because I think that's what they're paying him for, right?
Yep.
They're not paying him to drag the worst defense in the league to the Super Bowl. But hey, if we're spending our money on offense, can you be good enough if the defense is average? Do you think he can be good enough if the defense is average, Brandon?
Yeah. Yeah, so week 5, going against, what was the Tennessee Titans? Who was the team? Logan Ryan, I know was the cornerback, pulled him down.
Yeah, Logan Ryan
leg.
tore him down, broke his leg.
Logan Ryan, there you go. After that, no more Dak, but that dude was on pace to do something amazing, throw for almost 40 touchdowns. 5,000 yards, a quarterback as far as like a completion percentage, almost 70%. That is good enough. The only issue and the only challenge for that offense in Dak Prescott was the turnovers. Ball security, job security. You remind, we talk about it all the time on this show. Dak Prescott, if he eliminates the turnovers 100% with that type of output, that type of production, they will be right there in contention. They were averaging 497 yards of total offense. They were leading the NFL. So absolutely. But that defense can't do what they did last year.
Right.
All right, Brandon, I want to show you 2 things because I think Dak's contract is you don't get paid for what you did. You get paid for what you're going to do. And the trajectory of Dak Prescott has been up, 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 and up, like some Roblox IPO. Get it? If your kids are on the iPad all day, going up. But the question is this. Earlier in the show, you said maybe Dak is not necessarily going to be the exact same guy because of the injury. Last year, they were in the Philly special. Oh, Dak Prescott rolling out, catching passes. If you were the coach of that squad, and that's an obvious play that you don't need to have in your playbook, is that the type of play it's like, you know what? Cross that one out. I know Brandon says we need to get more creative, but we got to cross this one out because we got to protect this guy. Do you see something like that happening?
Yeah, I do. I mean, me, the way I've always looked at it, my quarterback, he's the most precious thing and the most precious person in the locker room. I used to tell Jay Cutler all the time, bro, I don't care about you taking off and running. Get down. Like, that's not cool to me. You putting your shoulder down, running somebody over on 3rd down, then getting the crowd hype. I don't want to see that. I need you to be here the whole season. I need to make sure I get my 10 catches. So I can absolutely see this happen. Nick, you talked about it earlier in the show, that Dak Prescott, there was a time when we were asking Dak to take off more. That's just not in his game, and I see it being less a part of his game moving forward coming off this injury.
And this was the last game Dak played last season. The most notable part of that highlight is if you saw the very bottom of the screen, and this is Brandon's point. It was the final seconds of the first half, and the New York Giants had 20 points. So to Brandon's point, if the defense is the same, they're drawing dead. But defense fluctuates year to year, even if the players don't fluctuate. You saw the Chiefs in 2018 go from a wretched defense to, in 2019, an average defense by changing defensive coordinator and not changing a lot of the personnel. That's what they hope the Dallas defense does, along with Dak cleaning up the turnovers but keeping the yards. And then, Jenna, they're going to be very happy with the contract if all those things happen.
We got to go. See you tomorrow.